Continuing. Enablers are full of excuses for the abuser and full of backhanded fake support for you. Mm. I just felt that like in deep down. I just know like there's healthy support and there's unhealthy support. And healthy support doesn't enable or condone terrible behavior. Another episode of Take Back Your Life, Conversations with Shay, where we help women overcome toxic thoughts, feelings, people, and situations by understanding their true identity in Christ so they can live a full and successful life. Yes. Today I want to talk to you about toxic enablers. In case you have no idea what a toxic enabler is, I did all the work for you and I looked it up. At psychcentral.com, I did find this good definition of what a toxic enabler is. It is someone who encourages or allows negative or self-destructive behavior in another. Here are some examples. Giving money to someone who has a gambling problem, lying to cover up bad behavior for someone else, or is making excuses for someone else's behavior. And I think that those around us, or those who are around people who display toxic behavior, the easiest thing for them to do is make an excuse as to why this person behaves this way. So that's why I think that is the most prevalent form of a toxic enabler. Now, I honestly can't. Well, in our family, we don't like to say the word can't, so I won't say it. But I will say I strongly dislike those who enable toxic behavior. And from almost everything in life, you can like point it back to childhood. And I can tell you that the environment that I grew up in, I was not surrounded by a bunch of people who enabled toxic behavior. Now, they may have tolerated toxic behavior, which can seem similar to enabling toxic behavior, but it's like the movie, it's a thin line between love and hate. There is a thin line between enabling and tolerating. And I can tell you that my family did not enable toxic behavior. As a matter of fact, you were called out on bad behavior more than you were probably praised for good behavior. So growing up in that type of environment kind of made me the person I am, where I despise people who enable toxic behavior. And yet, I still became someone who enabled toxic behavior in someone else. So when I was in the relationship that I was in, that I wrote my book about, that I was shamelessly plug until everyone in the world has read it, he almost stole my life, or at least every female in the world. He almost stole my life, the 2.0 version. And I just think that this is an important reading for any female, young or old, to first of all learn about the type of person that you are, the type of person who God created you to be, and then to avoid finding yourself in a toxic situation. But if you have found yourself in a toxic situation, the book is also great for you because it shows that you can get out of that situation. But I'm saying all that to say that the reason I have material for this book is because I found myself in a toxic and abusive relationship. And I found myself in a relationship where I gave this person excuses as to why he treated me the way that he treated me. So enabling toxic behavior can be that simple. And I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you may have found yourself enabling someone's toxic behavior. So I want you to sit back and think about that. Like, have you been treated poorly in a relationship, or have you been treated poorly in a family dynamic, or have you been treated poorly in a work environment, but instead of holding someone accountable for that behavior, you make excuses as to why this person is treat you this way, or you take it all on as it is, like it's your fault. Just stop and think about that. And it could be that simple, and that is one circumstance, one form of enabling someone else's toxic behavior. If you just take it and you don't make standard or set standards for yourself, or and for how you want other people to treat you, right? So it's one thing to enable someone's toxic behavior towards you. It's a complete different story when the friends or family members of that person who is treating you toxic enables that behavior. That is completely different. If you're in a situation where you're a victim of someone, I always like to say someone likes to put someone else's sins or thrust upon your life. Someone else's toxicity is thrust upon your life. If you're in that situation and you don't you lack an idea of who you are, lack an idea, an identity, your true identity, you have no relationship with Christ, you don't have a support system around you, it is almost inevitable that you will become an enabler of that person. Most of us, especially females, we have a nurturing spirit, and we want to make someone else better. And we think that enabling behavior, like making excuses for their behavior or changing yourself, will help that person become better. And it won't. But I want to talk about the friends and family members of those who enable someone's toxic behavior against someone else. And before I get to that, I just want to give you an idea of how strongly I despise toxic enablers. And I mentioned earlier in this video that I come from a family that did not enable poor behavior. Since we're on the subject of toxicity, you didn't want to do anything that would be labeled toxic because you didn't want to face the backlash that came along with that from your family members, especially my mom. My mom, was a strong woman, raised us, single mom, the whole thing. And of course we had like a family support system around us, but still at the end of the night, she did the whole single mom thing, and she tried her hardest. She tried her best, I should say, to keep us on the right track, and to make sure we understood right from wrong, and understood like, one, right in the biblical sense. Like we were, we were a church family, went to church every single week, and during the week, and all that good stuff. But also in a worldly sense, like we had the privilege of being like, I'll say since I'm talking about myself, but I had the privilege of being a church child, a church girl, and also understanding the ramifications of making some bad decisions outside of church life. Like I understood, like my mom was, worked at the hospital for 30 plus years. Like I would get, stories from a very young age, horror stories of like, the outcome of drug use, and the outcomes of, unprotected sex. Like I was given all of this stuff, and at a very early age, and it continued throughout my young adult life until my mother passed away. And some of you may know me, and you may know some of my story, and some of you may not know a lot of my background. I often talk about the reason why I fell into a bad relationship, or I fell into a relationship where I didn't feel worthy of the person. And a lot of that stemmed from some of the stuff that I did that I knew that was wrong, and some of the consequences that I faced. And I found myself in trouble with the law. I don't know if you can relate to, facing like serious consequences to like crimes. I'm not talking about you facing a consequence for skipping school, or you facing a consequence of staying out too late past your curfew, if you ever had a curfew. I'm talking about facing serious consequences to breaking the law. And throughout that whole situation that I was in, um, my mom and my family, I can say, supported me. They were there. They were with me while I went to my court dates. They helped me find a good lawyer. They helped me make some of the decisions that I made. Although my mom and my family was there to support me, they never condoned the behavior. They never condoned uh, my why I got into the situation. A great example of being around a group of individuals who happened to be my family, who didn't enable my behavior. And enabled my behavior, meaning they didn't make me feel comfortable to continue down the path that I was going down. They didn't give the woe is me excuse to the world as to why I made certain decisions that I made. They didn't say, she comes from a single mother household. She's seen some stuff in her life, drug and alcoholism, and that could tear up someone's life. She lost her father when she was in 11th grade. It was never excuses for the behavior that I displayed at this time in my life. And I am so thankful that I was able to go through something like that. And I learned a valuable lesson there, where I knew that, a little bit of my grace and mercy of me living recklessly was like starting to run out. And a little of the grace and mercy extended by God, to where He covered up a lot of the stuff that I did, was starting to run out. And this was a good example. Yeah. Spent money on lawyers, and I had a really good lawyer, and he worked out a really good deal to where now I can sit in front of you and say that I I don't have a felony. You can look up my name, and it's a clear background, which is I'm so very thankful for. But I mentioned that story to give you an idea of the difference between someone who enables someone's poor or toxic behavior and someone who doesn't. Someone who doesn't enable this type of behavior encourages change in this other person. And I came across this blog article written by Joanna Knopf, but the article was titled "Enablers of Abuse Don't Be a Flying Monkey." And I found some really good points to what it looked like, what a family or friend enabler looks like to someone who displays toxic behavior to someone else. And the damage, not only what it looks like, but the damage it causes the victim. Right. So I'm going to read this for you real quick. Family friends enabler or enabling. The abused person goes to a family member and or friend of the abuser seeking help, thinking that this is a person that loves both individuals. And surely if they knew the truth, they would talk to the abuser and get the abuser to change. So many people in abusive relationships do this and are further traumatized by it, and their concerns are minimized, and the abuse is justified. They typically get victim blamed with some examples of, what did you do in the first place to make him react that way? Or, I love you, and I am so sorry what you are going through. It is wrong, but what do you expect me to do? It's my family member, and I love and support him. Take a pause right there for a minute. How many times have you ever heard this in your life? If you've been in a situation where you were the victim of any type of abuse, mental, physical, emotional, you reach out to their friends or family because you think that, they probably don't love both of you equally, but they love you because you are a part of that person. You have been in that person's life for such a long time. And you go to them thinking that they will be able to, at least at the very, very least, show you some empathy with the situation. One, you really feel like you don't have anyone else to go to, and you feel like it's safe to go to this person's family or friend because that way you're not spreading the business of this person out on the streets. So you go to you go to these people, and you don't receive empathy. What you receive are excuses and justification of this person's actions. How many times have you experienced this in your life? And you leave worse than you were when you got there, because they minimize the poor treatment of you, and ultimately blame you because you should know better, right? You should know. How many people have said you should know better, like you're a child? Like my 6-year-old, if it's something that we've told them not to do over and over again and we got to call them out on it, like one of the things we say is you should know better. You should know better because we've taught you better. But in this situation, you're not a child. You're not a 6-year-old child. You're an adult, and you're going to someone that you think in your heart that loves you because you are attached to their friend or family member, and they treat you like you're a child and tell you that you should know better. Continuing on with the article. How many times have you heard he has always been stubborn? Maybe you need to be just a little more flexible and try to help him more when he is stressed out. Never mind the stress that you might be feeling. But these are all ways that, family or friend enablers make you feel when you reach out to them for help. Continuing, he didn't mean anything by it. Here's a kicker. At least he isn't as bad as his other family members are. He loves you so much, and that's why he acts this way, because he is afraid that he will lose you. Pause. How many times have you been in a situation where you're supposed to be loved? You're supposed to be in a loving relationship, but it don't feel like love, because definitions of love, biblical definitions, there are scriptures that talk about what love is. Love is gentle, love is kind, love is patient. Love doesn't lash out on you when they're stressed out or blame you for how you act towards them. As a matter of fact, if you are acting a certain way, love, being patient, learns how to process and react to your actions rather than quickly lash out on you and cause you harm, whether it be mental or physical. So if you're in a relationship where you believe is loving, and you feel minimized in this relationship, or the love you feel is suffocating, or the love you feel is controlling, or the love that you feel has you fearing for your life, that's not love. I'm gonna tell you right here, right now, that is not love. But a family member or a friend of an enabler may say that because that's what they believe love. That's how they believe that people show love. If it's a family member, most likely they grew up in the same type of environment. So that is something that is learned behavior. And that is a way that may be how they believe that love is expressed, but they are wrong. Continuing with the article. And then it goes on to say, remember that time you acted crazy. You aren't perfect either. Now we're getting into reactionary abuse. When he isn't so stressed out, he won't act that way. Continuing, enablers are full of excuses for the abuser and full of backhanded fake support for you. I just felt that like in deep down. I just know like there's healthy support and there's unhealthy support. And healthy support doesn't enable or condone terrible behavior. But the article continues, do not trust these individuals. They are what is referred to as flying monkeys. A flying monkey is essentially an enabler of abusers who act like they are on your side, but are actually giving information to the abuser, which is then used to further abuse you more. I mean, I'm laughing because I found myself one time in a similar situation where I went to my abuser's best friend and well, he called me and we were chatting, and I was so wet behind the ears that I didn't know that what I would say would get back to the person that I was with. I thought it would get back in a different way, where it would be, him pretty much holding his friend accountable. So I'm talking to the best friend of the person that I was with at the time, and I'm telling him some of the stuff that we were going through. And I'm not telling him about the physical abuse stuff, but I'm telling him a lot about the mental and verbal stuff. And he's so supportive and so understanding on the phone when I'm talking to him. We talk for, a good hour plus. And I thought that me talking to him would help bring some changes in our relationship, because I was naive enough to think that that would be a good outlet for me and that would help further or better our relationship. And I was wrong. I mean, I found myself being wrong so many times in this relationship. Now that I'm married, I can tell you that I'm like never wrong. I do all things right.